So today we're going to start looking at ways to prove triangles congruent, and tomorrow we're going to go over our two-column proofs for proving triangles congruent to each other. So before we do that, we need to go over some of our newer properties in order to prove these. So first off, two triangles are congruent if corresponding sides are congruent and corresponding angles are congruent. The symbol here, again, does mean congruent. Okay, so they have that same measure, they're equal to each other, they are congruent. So our different ways for proving two triangles congruent, we have 5. Okay, this first one is side, side, side. Okay, so we can prove two triangles are congruent to each other by side, side, side. So if I have my two triangles here, I would need my corresponding sides there to be congruent, my corresponding sides here to be congruent, and then that final side in both to be congruent. So side, 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 all 3 sides are congruent to the other. Yeah. Our next one is side, angle, side. Okay, so if I again have my two triangles, okay, I need one corresponding side congruent. I need one angle congruent, and then this remaining side here. Now it does have to kind of go in a specific order. So what you'll notice with side, angle, side is that you have this included angle. So for it to be side, angle, side, your angle has to be between your two sides. Okay, if it's not between your two congruent sides, say it's this angle or this angle, that's not side, angle, side. Okay? No. No. It's neither. It's nothing. Okay, my next way here is angle, side, angle. Okay. So again, this one does have a specific order. Okay, so for it to be angle, side, angle, your side has to be included between your two congruent angles. So if I have my first angle there congruent, I can mark my corresponding sides there congruent, then my last angle would have to be this one. Okay, so your side is between those two angles. So this one is an included side. Okay, the next one for any triangle is angle, angle, side. Okay, what you'll notice is that just like our last one, there's 2 angles congruent and 1 side. But with this, that's why your order is important. This one has an included side. This one has that non-included side. So your side's on the outside. It's not between those 2 congruent angles. So if I have these 2 angles congruent and these 2 angles congruent, the side that has to be congruent would not be between those 2. It'd have to be one of these 2 sides. Okay, and I'll just choose this one. Okay, so that side that's congruent has to be on the outside of your angles.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, the last one, this one's for right triangles only. This one is hypotenuse leg.
Oh, I was gonna say hypotenuse.
Okay, so this one's hypotenuse leg. So if I draw in my two right triangles here. Okay, I know since they're right triangles, that angle has to be a right angle. Now, hypotenuse leg is just what it says. It means both of your hypotenuse have to be congruent. Okay, that's a for sure. And then one of your legs between both of them. So this one. It could have been the other one as well. Okay, but hypotenuse for sure, and then one of your legs has to be congruent. And again, that's only in a right triangle. Any questions on those? Okay, so at the bottom, you're given two triangles, okay? And you're given a way to prove those two triangles congruent, and we want to label these, given that information. So I'm going to do this first one with you. So we want to prove these two triangles are congruent by side angle side. So I'm just going to start with these two sides are congruent. Okay, then I'm going to move to this angle and this angle are congruent. Now since I have those two, which side has to be congruent in both? The bottom one. Okay, that's not the only way you could have drawn this in. Okay, it's just one of the ways. But you want to make sure that angle is between your two congruent sides. Questions on that? Okay, I want you guys to draw out or label your sides and your angles according to what they give you in each of those pictures.
What's the lifeguard? I'm thinking about it.
Did you just get that email too?
Yeah.
Like,
Coming on your day off to take the practice ACT?
when's our day off?
January 29th.
28th.
Really?
It said 20.
No, it's
Was
They
it
changed
really?
it back? Like, we get to leave school?
Oh.
No, it's the day that we get off.
It's the day that you have
Lifeguard,
off.
I'm thinking about
But we can like come in and we can
I'm not
do the
doing it.
practice
That's what I
ACT.
semester.
All right, so for each of these, you might have yours labeled differently than how I label it. And if you really have a question about it, just raise your hand and I'll walk over and see if you were correct. So number 2, we need a side between two angles. Okay, so here are my two angles. And my side between the two. What? Yeah, if you had like these two angles congruent and the side between them, these two angles congruent, that side between them, as long as your side is between your two congruent angles. Number 3, we have angle, angle, side. So I'll start with this angle, and then your side can't be between those two, so it has to be on the outside. Hypotenuse leg, I know this has to be a right triangle then. Okay, your hypotenuse have to be congruent, so that is one part that you need to label. And then one of your legs, doesn't matter which. The last one is side, side, side. Okay, that means all 3 of your sides need to be marked congruent. Okay, none of your angles should be marked in that one. Any questions on those? Okay. On the back, what we have are some one-step proofs. So you're going to be given certain information. You're going to label your picture. Then you're going to see which triangles you're trying to prove congruent. And then you're going to say why they're congruent. So for this first one, number 6, we are given AC is equal to DF. So I'm going to label that on my picture here. I'm also given BC is equal to EF. And then last thing I'm given is angle C is congruent to angle F. Okay. So I'm trying to prove triangle ABC is congruent to DEF. So yes, it does just kind of go in order. So I go from a side to an angle to another side. I have that angle between two congruent sides, so it is side, angle, side. Okay? Looking at number 7, we have ED equal to RT, angle D congruent to angle T, and angle E congruent to angle R. So ASA. Okay, I have a side between two angles in both of my triangles here. Okay, questions on those first two? I want you guys to do the rest. Okay, even if you are working on your homework, stop, do the rest of these. Okay, do the rest of these. Label your picture. Look at which triangles you're trying to prove congruent. Look for freebies in your picture. Okay, see if they have a side in common or if they have vertical angles or something like that. Okay? And don't always assume that it's a right triangle unless it tells you it's perpendicular.
Well, this one's an H on there.
Mrs. Baldwin.
Why did you have to I don't think we use those. I guess not. BD's parallel, or no, perpendicular to AC. So it's a linear pair. I don't know this. AB, AC.
Oh, huh.
Oh, this 10 is HO. What did she say? I think you're onto something.
Mrs. Baldwin.
What was it?
We don't have an angle. Mrs. Baldwin is 11 angle side. She said angle side was wrong.
Sadie, which one are you doing?
We're almost done.
Well, it says it's perpendicular, so that means it's
She
too
said
right.
HL.
Really?
Yeah.
Mrs. Baldwin.
Don't try to
What is
Shut
this?
the hell up, Grant. I'll beat your ass.
Oh.
Do you think this would be
I do.
Is it really?
What is it?
Before you continue, I know some of you aren't done yet. I'm gonna look at number 9 really quick.
Please do.
So, number 9, I have segment BD is perpendicular to segment AC. Since those are perpendicular, that means you have right angles created. Okay? I'm also given AB is equal to BC. Okay, so those are congruent. Now, this is one of your pictures where you need to look to see if you have freebies. Okay, I'm trying to prove that ABD is congruent to CBD. Well, both of those triangles share this side right here. So if both triangles have that same side, it's equal to itself. Okay? So both triangles have side BD in them. This is where I said that reflexive property is going to come in really handy for our triangle proofs. You need to look at your picture, and if they share the side, you're going to have to state that in your proof, but you just say BD is congruent to BD. Now, if I'm looking at my picture here, this is not hypotenuse leg. Your hypotenuse isn't stated as congruent. You didn't label that, so it can't be hypotenuse leg. But I know both of my right angles are congruent to each other, and I have this angle between my two congruent sides. So this is side angle side. Okay, so that's one of those freebies you need to look for. If you have a shared side, say it's congruent to itself. Okay, continue with the rest of those problems now, please. They do?
Still don't know how to do these last.
I'll go through them.
What's our test gonna be? Not this week?
Next week. I think, let me think. We have 4, 5. No. We have like 3 weeks left. We have 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 6, 4, 8. Next week, Thursday.
When we come back,
A second.
The 2nd.
Are you on the breakout space?
No. I'm not done yet.
Isn't January 1st?
On Monday, I think.
Why? Wait, what day is January 5th?
Oh, no, January 1st is a Tuesday, and then we come back that Wednesday
Wait,
on the 2nd.
first? So we have one night to catch up on sleep?
Because you don't stay up past midnight almost every night anyways.
No, I don't. I'm a good boy. I go to bed at 7:30.
Oof, 7:30.
What?
I don't believe you.
I was actually gonna go to bed at 8 last night, but then I stayed up until 10.
All right, number 8. You're given AC is equal to EF. CB is equal to DF. and angle C is congruent to angle F. So I have an angle between two congruent sides. So this is side angle side.
You just say all the answers, if you don't get it, then we'll ask.
No.
Okay.
Number 10, I have AB equal to BC. EB congruent to BD. And angles A and C are right angles. Okay, so I have these two triangles. Since they are right triangles, if I look across, this is my hypotenuse. I have that labeled as congruent. And I have one of my legs labeled as congruent. So this one is hypotenuse leg. Number 11, we have AB equal to DC and angle X congruent to angle Y. Again, this is one where you have a freebie. Okay, your freebie is this shared side here, DB. Okay, so I'm just going to mark that it's congruent to itself. And again, I have an angle between two congruent sides. So this is side angle side. Okay, you can only go off of what you have labeled. So I have two sides and one angle. I need to then check to see if my angle is between my two congruent sides. Number 12, we have angle A congruent to angle B. And we have CD bisects angle ACB. Okay, if I have a bisector, what do I know about those two angles? They're equal. So angle 1 here will be congruent to angle 2. That's what happens when I have a bisector. Now I also have a freebie in this one. What is my freebie?
The line between D.
This line right here. They share this line, CD. So it is congruent to itself.
Gotcha.
So I have two angles and a side. My side is not between my two angles. So this is angle, angle, side. For this one, you have to be careful. It may look like it is a right triangle. Do not assume that it is a right triangle unless they tell you those are right angles or it's perpendicular. Okay? You can only use what you're given in that information. Okay, last one. We have CA perpendicular to AB. Since it's perpendicular, it does create a right angle. And DB perpendicular to AB. Again, creates a right angle since it's perpendicular. Then we have CA equal to DB. And AO equal to OB. What's this one?
Side angles. Alright.
It is side angle side. You have an angle between two congruent sides. Okay, any questions on these problems on the back?